the first outside investor was not Sequoia. It was not Andreessen Horowitz. It was In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital arm. The company was called Palantir, named after the all-seeing stone from The Lord of the Rings. At first, the promise was simple: connect the data no intelligence agency could connect alone. But 20 years later, that same idea sits inside wars, borders, hospitals, police systems, and corporate supply chains. So, the question is no longer, does the technology work? The question is, who gets to use it? And who gets to stop it? And this is the story of how two men who agreed on almost nothing built one of the most consequential data platforms in history, and what it means when so few external forces can meaningfully slow them down. Before we go any further, you need to understand one thing. Palantir is not a data company. It is not a software company in any normal sense. It is a God view company. That is the internal term they used in the early years. One interface, everything visible. A single pane of glass through which analysts could see the whole picture at once. Think about what that means. The CIA has data. The FBI has data. The NSA has data. The IRS has data. The military has data. For decades, all of it sat in separate silos, inaccessible to each other, speaking different formats, maintained by different contractors who had every financial incentive to keep it that way. Palantir's first product was simple in concept and almost impossible in execution. It connected all of it, and what you could see once you connected all of it was terrifying. Peter Thiel grew up in Namibia under apartheid. His father worked at a uranium mine that was secretly extracting ore for South Africa's nuclear weapons program. The school Peter attended still operated under a curriculum that had not fully let go of its pre-war influences. He was 9 years old. This is where he first understood something about how power actually works. Not through democracy, not through fairness, through information, leverage, and the willingness to act on both before your opponent realizes what is happening. He carried this understanding to Stanford, where he was bullied, isolated, and furious. He responded the way he would respond to every obstacle for the rest of his career. He built a network and waited. When PayPal was sold to eBay in 2002 for $1.5 billion, Thiel walked away, wealthy and ready. His engineer had built a fraud detection system called Igor that used pattern recognition to find criminals hiding in transaction data. The FBI noticed. Thiel noticed something else. If software could identify a stolen credit card by spotting invisible patterns in a sea of transactions, why couldn't it identify a terrorist cell? The question was academic in 2001. After September 11th, it was a business plan. The United States had all the data. That is the part nobody talks about. Multiple agencies had intercepted communications from the hijackers. There were visa alerts. There were flight school reports. There were financial transfers. The data existed, every single piece of it, but it was scattered across 17 different intelligence agencies, each of which was legally and structurally prevented from sharing with the others. Nobody connected the dots. 3,000 people died, not because of a lack of information. They died because of a lack of a system that could look across all of it at once. Thiel saw the gap. In 2003, he started building the system. He brought in Alex Karp to run it. They had been roommates at Stanford. They had argued for years about politics, power, and the nature of civilization. Karp had then spent years in Frankfurt getting a philosophy doctorate under a neo-Marxist, running an investment fund, and developing a theory of institutional power. He looked like someone who had wandered out of a Nietzsche book club. He would become one of the most consequential CEOs in the world. He told his employees there were only 3 moments when he was not thinking about Palantir: when swimming, meditating, and during sex. He acknowledged uncertainty about the last one. They named the company after the Palantiri, the all-seeing orbs in Lord of the Rings. In Tolkien's mythology, Sauron, the Dark Lord seeking to dominate Middle-earth, uses a Palantir to spy on enemies, read minds across vast distances, and bend weaker men to his will. Just by looking into the stone, you become visible to him in return. The more you use it, the more it controls you. Peter Thiel, a lifelong Tolkien obsessive, named his surveillance company after the Dark Lord's spying tool. Make of that what you will. The first investor was not a Silicon Valley venture firm. It was In-Q-Tel. Yes, the CIA has a venture capital arm. Most people are not supposed to know that. In-Q-Tel invested $2 million, which was not about the money. It was about a door. The CIA became Palantir's first customer. For 3 years, that was the only customer. Engineers lived in the office. They called the headquarters the Shire. They called themselves hobbits. The culture was monastically secretive. Every single access to the data left a trace. If you opened the system, you were logged. Even Peter Thiel himself would leave a record. The watchers were also watched. By 2007, Palantir's Gotham platform had reached Afghanistan and Iraq. What it could do was extraordinary. You could take a bomb fragment recovered from a roadside attack and trace it backward through the entire chain. Who built it? Where the materials came from? Which phone was used to detonate it? Who that phone had called? Who those people had met with? When and where? The whole kill chain, visible in one interface that actually worked. It looked like Google Maps. One commander described it as seeing the battlefield the way God sees it. Special forces requested it. Generals demanded it. And the Department of Defense took note. But here is where it becomes genuinely disturbing. In 2012, in Afghanistan, the U.S. military ran a surveillance program with codename Eye of God. Aerostats, surveillance balloons, hovered over 20 villages. They tracked the movement of every person in those villages, their daily routines, their social connections, when each person woke up, when they left home, when they returned. One analyst later described how a local man came to them asking if they had seen his goat. The analyst said nothing, but he could have told the man exactly where the goat was. He could have told him when the goat had last been near a known militant's compound. The profiles were that detailed. They knew, according to one account, approximately when each person visited the bathroom. This same technology came home. Immigration and Customs Enforcement signed a contract. The software that had mapped insurgent networks in Fallujah began mapping the social networks of undocumented workers in Los Angeles and Chicago. Same algorithm, different target.
Okay, but our product is the single hardest product in the world to abuse because every single step that you take is absolutely transparent. So if you want to use our product to abuse human rights, you've created a record of you doing it.
One engineer resigned with a letter saying he had joined to stop terrorists, not deport families. More letters followed. Karp defended the contracts. The contracts were consistent with the worldview Thiel had already described publicly. He had written in a widely circulated essay that he no longer believed freedom and democracy were compatible, that women gaining the right to vote was one of the reasons American civilization had declined. When someone who believes this builds a software used in immigration enforcement, the ideological logic is not hard to follow. Then there was the New Orleans program nobody was supposed to know about. For years, the New Orleans Police Department ran a secret predictive policing program with Palantir. The program analyzed historical crime data and generated predictions about where crimes would occur and who was likely to commit them. Officers were deployed accordingly. People were flagged based on their social networks, their past contacts, their geography, not what they had done, what the algorithm predicted they might do. The program operated for years without public disclosure. When it was eventually reported, the city said it had ended. Palantir said it had been a research project. The people whose names appeared on those lists were never told. At home in San Francisco, something else was happening. Peter Thiel had a problem with a media company. Gawker had outed him as gay before he was ready to discuss it publicly. They had mocked his business failures. They had investigated his companies. Thiel decided to destroy them, not through a public campaign, quietly, over years. He secretly funded the legal cases of people who had grievances against Gawker, paying tens of millions of dollars in legal fees from the shadows. The decisive case was a wrestler named Hulk Hogan, whose sex tape Gawker had published. Thiel bankrolled the litigation. Gawker lost a $140 million judgment and filed for bankruptcy. The publication that had spent years reporting on Silicon Valley power was gone. Thiel called it one of the most philanthropic things he had ever done. Reporters Without Borders called it a threat to press freedom. the world learned something important about Peter Thiel. He plays very long games. He does not forgive. He does not announce his moves. He completes them. In June 2018, at a party in Austria, a Russian diplomat named Daniil Beisinger introduced himself to Thiel. Beisinger worked at the Russian embassy in Berlin and occasionally interpreted for Vladimir Putin. He invited Thiel to the St. Petersburg Economic Forum and offered to arrange a private meeting with Putin. Thiel declined. He later told investigators that Beisinger was almost certainly an FSB officer. A German investigation subsequently linked Beisinger to a network of Russian operatives funding the far-right AfD party. In January 2022, 1 month before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Beisinger contacted Thiel again with another invitation. Thiel did not respond. What the Russians did not know, what almost nobody knew, was that Peter Thiel had been working as a confidential human source for the FBI since 2021. The libertarian who had spent his career arguing that government was the enemy of freedom was secretly reporting to the government's domestic intelligence apparatus, because some threats apparently required the state after all. Meanwhile, the company kept expanding. Palantir's Foundry platform entered corporate America. Oil companies used it. Pharmaceutical giants used it. Banks used it for anti-money laundering. During the pandemic, the US government contracted Palantir to track outbreaks and distribute vaccines. The British NHS, the repository of health data for 67 million people, gave Palantir access to its systems. British civil liberties groups were alarmed. Palantir's answer, delivered from a position of complete security, was essentially, look at the results. In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Palantir was already embedded in Ukraine's command structure. Karp flew in not by plane, since no commercial flights operated. He came by train and became the first CEO of a major public company to meet with Zelensky in the war zone. He opened a permanent office. Engineers customized the platform. By December, The Times reported that Palantir software was helping optimize Ukrainian artillery strikes in real time.
Some of the places that have used our product have been bombed. People have died. And the same day, those people are back at work.
Karp confirmed it. He said publicly that the company's software was responsible for a significant part of the targeting of Russian forces on occupied territory. He did not apologize. He said it the way a general discusses logistics. The philosopher had become a war hawk, or perhaps he always had been, and the war had simply given him the occasion to show it. In May 2023, Palantir became the sole certified supplier of AI targeting tools for the Pentagon under Project Maven. Radar systems that see through clouds and darkness, thermal sensors, satellite imagery, all of it processed and analyzed automatically. The system located rocket launchers in Yemen. It tracked ships in the Red Sea. It helped narrow targets for strikes in Iraq and Syria. Simultaneously, the same company's technology was helping Israeli forces in Gaza. Karp expressed pride in both. He wrote that the tech industry had abandoned its responsibility to defend Western civilization, and that Palantir was reclaiming it. And here's the question nobody has answered. Peter Thiel has funded Donald Trump, has been connected to the political rise of other power figures, secretly destroyed a media company, reported to the FBI, and turned down meeting requests from Putin's intelligence service. He runs a board seat at a company whose software is embedded in the military decisions of 24 nations. He has said publicly that technology at its best is not subject to democratic control. He has funded research into immortality because he refuses to accept that death is inevitable. He has backed floating libertarian cities exempt from national law. He has invested in every technology that will define the next century. He owns a bunker in New Zealand. What does Peter Thiel actually want? And here's the larger question. When a private company knows more than your cabinet, your generals, your intelligence services, and your central bank, when its software is making targeting decisions in active wars, tracking immigrants in your cities, profiling citizens in your neighborhoods, and monitoring the supply chains of your economy, and when the two men who control it answer to no external authority, no regulator, no democratic mechanism who exactly is in charge.
It's like, it doesn't actually, and I do support all those things, it doesn't actually mean that you support every decision. It means you support them having a superior position to their adversaries.
In the fall of 2024, Peter Thiel gave a series of private lectures in San Francisco on the theme of the Antichrist. His argument, as reported by those present, was that someone or something would soon arrive claiming to solve humanity's problems through technology and artificial intelligence, and that the world, out of fear and gratitude, would hand over control of everything: science, finance, war, information. He seemed to believe this was not a metaphor. The man who built one of the most powerful data companies in history was warning in biblical terms that someone was going to use technology to take over the world. He did not say who he was afraid of. He did not say whether he was afraid of himself. Palantir software is now present in more than 24 countries. It has been used to find terrorists, win a war, deport families, predict crimes before they occur, track pandemics, and help decide which coordinates to strike in active combat. The same platform, the same code, the same two men who have been arguing about power and civilization since they were roommates in Stanford in 1987. One believes freedom requires the dismantling of democratic structures. The other believes those structures are worth defending at any cost. Together, they built a machine that governments across the political spectrum consider indispensable, and neither of them seems particularly concerned about what happens when someone finally asks them to stop. They named the company after the instrument Sauron used to see everything, bend weaker minds, and extend his dominion across Middle-earth. Tolkien's warning about the Palantiri was not that they showed false visions. The warning was that they showed true ones, and that the truth, in the hands of the wrong person, was the most dangerous thing in the world. The answer to that question is that Karp and Thiel are in charge, not elected, not accountable to shareholders. In any meaningful sense, they structured the voting rights so that public investors have no real leverage, not subject to the kind of external oversight its critics believe the power deserves. Because no country that uses their product wants to regulate it out of existence. They built this deliberately. The libertarian and the philosopher agreed on one thing: that the systems which normally constrain power democratic accountability, press scrutiny, regulatory oversight, were obstacles to be managed, not constraints to be respected. They named it after a crystal ball that lets you see everything. They forgot to mention the part where looking too long into it drives you mad. Or perhaps they did not forget. Perhaps they simply did not consider it a problem.